Please
Okay.
go ahead.
At the very outset, I must thank Department of History, Central University of Karnataka for giving me this opportunity to share my views on my recent finds. I have been associated with this university as the nominee of President of India, that is visitors nominee, since 2019. So I feel it is my duty also to take part in this academic activity of the university. So I begin now my presentation. I have tried to analyze annals historiography for the reconstruction of cultural history of medieval India. Many of the participants here who have been researchers are aware of different historiographical schools. Say for example, we have subaltern school which also speaks about culture. Then we have got quite a few historians who deal with science and technology. They also are very much wanting to have the different facets of culture into their studies. But my main focus will be on Annals School, which was a French school of thought. I have already sent my presentation for the Dropbox, so maybe that also will be available for the participants later. Beginning of Annals schools in France was by Marc Bloch and Lucie Faber. A very important work of Marc Bloch is considered as historian's craft. In historian's craft, he has tried to analyze as to how different historians use their language skills, their data to suit their projection of history, which means, in other words, that every historian has a built-in sense of historiography. As we all know, historiography is the sense of writing history, the style of writing history. So naturally, the Marxist historians would portray history in a different manner. Secularist historian would portray in different manner. Nationalist schools will have a different approach. But while saying this, Marc Bloch and his assistant later, that is Lucie Faber, they came to the understanding that by 1929, no cultural history had been written. For writing cultural history, there needed to be a different kind of data collection. The data collection would then focus on undocumented history. The documented histories, which the researchers knew through many government records, maybe newspaper clippings, even inscriptions, and many such other sources, they focused mainly on the royalty, nobility, their works of social welfare. So what I mean is that their approach was mostly from above, what the kings wanted, what the nobles wanted, what the governments wanted. But cultural history is such a phenomenon which is built in us. We carry many sources of history with ourselves. Starting from Marc Bloch and Lucie Faber, when Annals School started expanding, they, the historians of Annals School, gave certain objectives. And as we read the biographies of these scholars, we understand that they appeal to people going to several places to record their narratives, to give many data related to their marriages, their folk songs. So these were never documented. Their food habits, their preparation of food, their fabrics, everything was waiting to be explored. So resources found us, but we were hardly aware of such tools which could be then penned down for the history purpose. And that is why the purpose of annals in 1929, when there was a French on this platform for intellectual discipline of history. While saying this, they also said that history per se is really inadequate, in the sense that if history as a discipline is joined with anthropology, with demography, with economics, and many other sciences, even for that matter, mythology, because Mark Bloch speaks about the Greek myths in his work, Feudal Society, which is very interesting, but it's a different topic altogether. So, different methodologies, they also should blend with history, and then only we can write cultural history. So, the nature of history must be interdisciplinary. They emphasized upon that because only then the cultural history could be written. There are various kinds of techniques in technology and science which have changed the world, but we hardly are aware of that. A simple thing when we say about furniture, we must know what kind of technology was involved then at that time. Now, while reading uh, Fernand Braudel's book, presently also, Structures of Everyday Life, I'm amazed the kind of approach which he has developed by collecting the simple data with regards to curtains, with regards to when the cupboards were made and things like that. So we don't understand. Then the sixth general objective was removal of division as civilized and primitive societies. Because do we say that the tribal societies do not have history? No, we are utterly wrong. Because every tribe has some or the other cultural resource. But unfortunately, we are ignorant of that. And hence, we should not make any kind of difference between civilized and primitive societies. Otherwise, we'll be losing a lot. And when we progress into future, we will feel probably we are really vacant. In order that it should not happen, we should blend the civilized and the primitive societies, and we should understand what were the cultural contributions to each society. So we should make history useful, not just which is buried and taken out only for study. It should be a flowing, running history. And then they said there should not be any narrative history. No narrative history means actually there are narratives, but these oral narratives they wanted to archive. This is the concept of total history. So archiving these different kinds of oral narratives became the viewpoint of annals school. So by and by, while discussing the objectives, you all must have known that they wanted to use different techniques also. And these techniques were collection of the oral data, basically. When we come to Fernand Braudel, his major works are the Mediterranean and the Mediterranean world. Uh, and in that, we have got also the concept of time and space. He is the first one to say that there is a concept of environmental determinism. That is, the man, that is the human being, the kind of braces he was wearing, the kind of food he was cooking, even the kind of the kind of that is a different theory altogether. We are not going to the details of that. I just made a mention of one book of his, The Structures of Everyday Life, which presently I'm reading for my own understanding, just to go into deep and then try to have some kind of theoretical understanding. But while going through these 3 volumes, I feel that there are very few references to India. And so during this particular talk of mine, I would appeal to young scholars that we must have lot of vernacular sources. Maybe he was not aware of the Indian vernacular sources, and that is why he has not used. Mainly his focus is on giving the cultural resource of European history, and when he comes to Asia, mostly he speaks about China. But very, very few details he has given of India. So we Indians lots to research on. And this is my humble kind of suggestion to all young scholars to take various fields of cultural history. Now, it will be very interesting that when Annal School was developing, especially when Fernand Braudel came to the scene of Annal School, we have one scholar in Deccan College, Parshuram, and it's very interesting that he also was at the same time looking into the different resources of cultural history. His 4 volumes, Studies in Indian Cultural History, are really worthy of reading as to how in those days, when in India no platform for cultural history had developed, he was the lone person to collect various cultural resources, especially from the Sanskrit manuscripts and travelogues. And he also understood science as culture, which is very important. Simple thing when we are stitching the cloth, the needle we are using, but hardly we know who must have invented the needle, because that individual who invented the needle has gone much beyond the curtains of historical layers. It is very difficult to find also. So this is one very simple example as to how the science is an important aspect of changing culture. In those days, that is in 1960s, a little before that, because he died, P.K. Gode died in 61. But in 1950s or so, when he was collecting different cultural data and trying to interpret, the contemporary scholars in Pune called his method the Gode method. But unfortunately, not much justice is given to P.K. Gode, which we all must try to give him. Mark Bloch speaks about the concept of folk memory, which is very interesting. And he says that many of our ideas are today in cultural history just because of folk memory. That is simple thing. The women folk. I'm not here trying to say that only women folk should cook, but generally I'm saying that the women folk have learned the art of cooking from their mother. Mother has learned from grandmother, and so on. And then the present mothers would teach even their sons the art of cooking. Now, when I'm saying this, it is only the memory which is passed on from one generation to another generation. That is not recorded anywhere, documented. So, folk memory becomes also the very base of Annal School. Popular culture, which is seen in different ways, folk songs, folk performances, that is also having a very strong base of folk memory. Now, taking this concept of folk memory, my research since last 15 years has been on the Shahiri literature in Marathi. Shahiri Kavya, or the poetic composition of the Shahirs, is inclusive of Lavani and Povada. Povada is the description of the brave deeds of the kings, the heroes, on the military field, while the Lavani is said to be having a lot of delicacy. Generally, Lavani is associated with the woman's song. But there are many Lavnis on cities, on festivals, also on some other topics. Generally speaking, it is said that origin of Shahiri must have been sometime in 11th century CE. There are various definitions of Shahiri, which we are not going into the details, but the word Shahiri or Lavani especially has intrigued many scholars. Lavani as a folk performance came as became a very interesting performance for Maharashtra. Shahiri compositions were passed on posterity orally. They were not written down till the end of 19th century. Initially, we will find that patronage was military cantonment. When Maharashtra faced many military challenges from the Islamic expeditions, we will find still the Shahirs performing in the military cantonment. And it is very interesting to note that when we read a particular Lavani, from the language, from the words used, we can understand that this particular Lavani must have been performed in the military cantonment where there were many Muslim soldiers, because there are quite a few Arabic and Persian words. This medieval period is very important in understanding as to how the Marathi language also has grown. Today, if we are trying to understand Marathi, we will find that many words, about 50% at least the words, are having Arabic Persian origins. Now, this period, medieval period, was a period of great transformation, even linguistically. And Lavani and Shahiri literature has contributed a lot for this. There are references to Vadas or Maratha affluent houses with gardens, cloth materials, coins, fruits, and other cultural items in Lavani. Interestingly, the concept of Haveli was not in Maharashtra at that time, in medieval times. Haveli is the word which was current in medieval times for affluent houses in Rajasthan and generally in North India. But interestingly, the word Haveli has come here. Then similarly, we have got different kinds of coins mentioned. There is a particular concept called batta. Now, the concept of batta is to be understood in the contemporary mint structure. When there were two warring parties, and when both of them decided, enough of war, let us have some truce. At that time, they would sit together. One party would ask the defeated party, the winner party would ask the defeated party to pay some ransom, some cost. Now, in those days, all the coins used to be having some kind of mark. And that mark was a pointed stretch mark kind. If that was there, the coin was said to be original. If it was not there, then the other party would say that the intrinsic and the face value of the coin is not the same. So if it was decided that the defeated party should pay 5,000 silver coins to the winning party, and if the amount of silver to be collected from 5,000 coins is not the same, or it is being less, then the cost which was given by the defeated party plus or over and above 5,000 coins was called batta. So batta, this particular term, is connected with adulteration. Interestingly, in some Lavnis, we will find the heroine saying, I am a pure coin and you will not have to pay any batta. Now, when we are reading such lines, we have to understand the structure. And interestingly, as you will know, the people who were watching also knew what is the significance of this particular line. Similarly, there is a particular adjective of a fruit, especially mango or jackfruit. Irsal. Today, if you utter this word irsal in Marathi, it is not conveying a good moral sense. It is usually associated with a young boy who is misbehaving. Who is misbehaving not only in other ways, but in sexual way. So I was really wondering as to how this irsal has come as the adjective of mango. Irsal amba, irsal phanas. Phanas means jackfruit. Then I tried to seek the meaning. When I saw Molesworth's dictionary, I came to know that irsal is having Arabic origin. Then it came into Persian, and irsal is having the meaning of a ripe fruit which is ready to pluck. That got associated with the youthfulness of the person. So these are some of the examples. Actually, all these examples I have dealt with in my separate articles. I have just given some examples here. Even though Lavani was in medieval times, yet you will find that the patronage to the Povadas was given during Shivaji's period, and then the Povadas became a kind of court performance also. So there are many Shahirs who were given patronage by Shivaji, Sambhaji, and many others. Patronage to the Lavnis, and especially erotic Lavnis, came during the Peshwa period from 1750 to 1818 CE. Important Shahirs in Lavni as Lavni composers we can find, whose references we get also in Peshwa Daftar, that is those who were given Vidagi, that is some kind of honorarium for performance on the occasions like Holi, Sankranti, Diwali. Their names are Konaji Bala, Parshuram, Ramjoshi, Bhakar, Anant Fandi, and Sagandhav. Though their records are found, it is said that actual number of Shahirs could be about 400. But not all the Shahirs have recorded their names in the last line of the Lavani. Only 125 or so they have recorded. But so many Shahirs composed Lavnis maybe on the condition of anonymity. As I said earlier, the Lavnis of Peshwa period, they were erotic ones, but the tradition of Lavani from earlier times was also that the Lavnis were made on cities and festivals. As we have been seeing, there are many words in Lavnis which are symbols of new culture. I just gave one example with regards to fruits. Even Haveli, there is a very popular Lavani which is sung even today, which is performed even today सुंदरा मनामध्ये भरली, हवेलीत शिरली, मोत्याचा भांग. Now here, हवेलीत शिरली, as I said, you cannot imagine the Haveli-like structure in Maharashtra at that time. At the most, Vadas were constructed. But Haveli is the particular kind of word of affluent living which is imposed on the contemporary Maharashtra, which was as if to exaggerate the meaning of abundance of abodes. Then there are festivals, prominently the color festival of Holi. It's very interesting to know that the Holi festival earlier in Maharashtra was only the worship of Holi, that is the fire at night on Holi Purnima. And then next day was Dhulwad, that is the same ash was to be thrown on each other the next morning. There was no color festival. But we get documentary evidence, and interestingly, there is one particular Lavani also, which says that Mahadaji Shinde brought the color festival in the court of Savai Madhavrao Peshwa. And since then, Maharashtra started having the color festival. Earlier, there used to be only Gulal Gotas. That is, only the Gulal was to be packed in abrak, as it is said, or mica, M-I-C-A. And then these used to be flashed on one another. We have also a number of textiles mentioned in Salamis, like Mehmudi, Chit, Malmal, Kinkhap, Mukesi, Ghazni, and again Kinkhap. They don't come just as the types of textiles. Sometimes they become the adjectives of a heroine. That is, the heroine's complexion is looking like Mukesi. Mukesi is the kind of color of the moon's luster. So you will see that many Lavnis are having the double words or double lines, and we have to understand these words. The concept of Batta I have already explained, even Haveli, just by and by we have explained. Interestingly, some of the Shahirs that I mentioned earlier also performed in the courts of Bhosle rulers of Tanjavur. Especially we have got the Shahir Honaji Bala performing. And even though we do not have the word Honaji Bala, suppose in case we don't read that word, we carefully decide to ignore also. Still you will find that from that language and from the kind of words which are used, we will find that they are here in Tanjavur. For example, here there are the food items like murukke or kapi, coffee, which you will not find when the Shahirs were performing or composing for the citizens of Maharashtra. There are various references of plantations of new saplings which are there, and various food items. In 1749, Nana Saheb Peshwa was given the order of administrative authority, and that is why he decided to have his administrative authority from Pune, from Satara, because of the internal turmoil which we are not here actually trying to point out. So you will find that when he went to Pune, he had many efforts to populate the city of Pune, and that's why he also decided to beautify the city so that the people would come and settle there. We have documentary evidence that he and his Sardars ordered many saplings from north so that Pune would be beautiful. Then we go to the next slide. Historical records, as I was just saying, see here my whole viewpoint is that when we are using the resource of cultural history, that is to be supported by the historical records and also from the material evidence. The material evidence will come little later in the next slides probably. So there are quite a few, one can say, the Peshwa Daftar records and also Satara Rajas and Peshwa diaries. So
Hello,
regular jotting was there, and we have got.
hello, ma'am. This is
I'm
Arjun
just
here.
keeping one or two
Just a second.
samples. You will find that there was one order placed where there were 275 kilograms on
Hello,
the
ma'am.
cloth
Just a second.
and all
Just
that,
a minute.
and then we find.
Apologies
Yeah.
to stop you.
Hello.
Apologies to stop you. The share screen of your PPT is not there.
It's not here.
Yes, the PPT is not seen. If you wish to continue talking without
Oh.
PPT, fine, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, is it seen now?
Yes, ma'am. Is it seen? Go ahead.
Okay, so earlier slides you could see 2 or 3? 2-3 slides could you see? Can you see it now? Hello?
You can see the current slide now.
But how many slides haven't been there earlier?
It was almost 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, so fine. I think from here, probably I'll just, you may just read now.
Okay, ma'am.
Because I have
Please carry on.
already explained. Yes, I think I was here. Is it seen now?
Yes, ma'am, it is
Hello,
visible.
is
It is visible, yes.
So I was just explaining the textiles, and then very interestingly, you will find that there are references to pearls. The Peshwas were very fond of pearls. There are also in the Lavnis, and in the Lavnis, the pearls are called Guladhava, or the pearls having the luster as that of the jaggery syrup. And then they were also brought from Surat, and hence they are also called Surti Dana. The Peshwas were very, very particular in getting the best quality of pearls, especially from Hormuz. And I have just given here one order. In 1770, Madhavrao Peshwa had given an order to Nana Fadnis to send pearls from Shinde's collection for a necklace of pearls made for Narayan Rao. Then there are some examples of structures and gardens. As I said, in 1749, the urbanization of Pune took place, and then there are many records thereafter of different kinds of pets or the localities having several vadas and many gardens. Here is one particular list of gardens in Peshwa Daftar volume 40. Now I'm coming to some material evidence also. As I said, that for understanding cultural history, it is better not only to depend upon the oral compositions, but also to give the documentary evidence as well as the material evidence. So we have seen the documentary evidence by way of the Peshwa Daftar records in 2-3 earlier slides. Now here, as you will see, the courtesies late Anandrao Raste. This is Sardar Rastewada of Vai. Haveli, the concept of Haveli, you can see reflected in this wall painting also. Here the Ganesh Pujan is going on. It's very interesting to note that a 10 days Ganesh festival first started with the Peshwa rule. And that was actually a little before Ganesh Chaturthi also. So you will find that it started on the Pratipada, then Dvitiya, Tritiya, Chaturthi. That way it went on. So here you will find the ladies in 9-yard saris, and they are worshipping Lord Ganesha, but the entire ambience is of Haveli. We also have documentary evidence that there were many artists from Rajasthan who were commissioned for these wall paintings. And either they were habituated to, Haveli painting scene, or Haveli painting scene was made to order by the Peshwa. So if they could not create their own Havelis, at least in the paintings, you will find that the Haveli was there. Here again, you will find this is the color festival. In between, though it's not very clear because these paintings are very old, but somehow or the other, and they are not well maintained also, unfortunately, but still we could do some kind of photography here. And you will find that there are these women, gopis sort of, and in between you have got Lord Krishna. The gopis, interestingly, are wearing 9-yard saris. So these wall paintings also need to be reconstructed from the point of view of cultural history, as to how there is a blend of Rajasthan concepts of Rajasthan festival, and the Maharashtrian images which are created. One finds very interestingly reference tells to pearls, as I just now said, and there is Hormuji Moti. The moti or the pearl coming from Hormuz of Persia was said to be of the best quality. Today, you must be knowing, Basra Moti is said to be the best. So it's the same. Earlier, it was called Hormuji. Now it is Basra. And then we have got the words like Guladhava, the pearl having the luster as that of jaggery syrup. And as it was offloaded at Surat, then it was called Surti. A laffa, the first one I have showed is laffa, and this is a typical ornament, neck ornament worn by a Kathak dancer. But this ornament became very famous at that time, though it was extremely valuable and very costly, because originally the pearls and diamonds only were used. And then we have got the cap, which actually would cover the entire ears, from the earlobe to the top portion of the ear. Now there is a very interesting kind of description of Puttalyanchi Mal. We will find that this is a kind of coin jewelry. In medieval times, please remember, there was no coin in India which had any image. An image that, I mean, we know Islamic rulers' coins. So at that time, the merchants coming from Venice, when they brought with them their own coin, that was a novelty. That coin had the picture of the elected king of Venice called Doge. It weighed 3.5 grams and it was of pure gold. As this had some kind of statue-like image, the Indians started calling it Puttali. And we have got also very interesting evidence that some of the merchants collected such coins and gave gifts to their wives to make a necklace of that. Then sometime later, an idea dawned upon them why we must have a foreign deity or a foreign king in the neck of the wives. Let us have Lakshmi. And then we have got the concept of Lakshmi Har later on. So this is a kind of changing culture which I have just showed you. This is a portrayal of Ras, which is very interesting, and the paintings of my liking personally. You will find that this is from Nana Fadniswada Menagli. Here, Ras is shown, the Garba, which was not in Maharashtra, definitely. It has become a part of Maharashtra culture now, with many Gujaratis living here. But you will find that the gopis are wearing typical Brahmanical ornaments. On the head, they are wearing Motyacha Bhang, which is covering the entire middle portion of the head. And then we have got a typical hair arrangement called Khopa. Then they have got Nath also. And moreover, all these gopis, they are having the Garba, but they are wearing 9-yard saris. So this is a very interesting kind of fusion of culture. So more or less, I have completed my presentation. I have given some select bibliography here for the benefit of young researchers who want to carry on research on cultural history as to how we can reconstruct cultural history. So there are 2 slides of that, 3 slides, and the third one is of secondary sources. Thank you.